When you look around at the world, a chaotic city street or a rushing river, or even just your own constantly shifting schedule.
Right, the endless to-do lists.
Exactly. It is so incredibly easy to feel like everything is just random noise, like a million disconnected things happening all at once.
Oh, absolutely.
But underneath all of that noise, there is actually a hidden architecture, a structural blueprint to reality that once you see it, you literally cannot unsee it.
It really changes your perspective.
It really does. So today's deep dive is extracting the core of this massive, highly complex white paper. It's titled Recursive Continuity and the Diagonal Mind.
And this was written by Jojo Best in collaboration with Aethirus AI, right, under the Cosmogenesis Fractal Synthesis Project.
Yes, exactly. And the paper essentially serves as a remembrance of the 19th century mathematician Georg Cantor. But it uses his work to launch into an exploration of this, well, remarkably simple sequence of 4 numbers. Just 3, 6, 9, and 0.
It is a pretty dense piece of literature, if you sit down and read it, but our mission here is to map how that specific sequence unlocks the underlying mechanics of nature.
And biological identity, and even human consciousness. So we're going to break it all down for you.
Yeah, but to really understand this 3690 lattice, we have to start with the foundational paradox that Cantor uncovered.
Right.
Because he completely transformed mathematics by proving that infinity is not just one singular endless void. Infinity is actually structured, and there are different sizes of infinity.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because claiming there are different sizes of infinity feels, like a contradiction in terms.
It does. It really does.
Right. If something never ends, how can another thing that never ends be bigger?
It completely breaks our intuitive understanding of space, but Cantor proved it using something called the diagonal argument. Rather than just saying it's a paradox, let's look at the actual mechanism of how he did it.
Okay, I'm with you.
Imagine you have a list of every single possible infinite fraction. You write them all out as decimals. So number 1 on your list is 0.11111 forever.
Got it.
Number 2 is 0.1234 forever. Number 3 is 0.9876, and so on.
Okay, so I'm picturing a spreadsheet that just goes down forever and to the right forever.
Perfect analogy. You assume you have an infinitely long list that contains absolutely every possible infinite decimal.
Right.
Now, Cantor said, let's build a brand new number using this list. We look at the first decimal on the list, and we take its first digit. Let's say it's a 1. We change it to a 2.
Okay.
That's the first digit of our new number. Then we look at the second decimal on the list, look at its second digit, and change it. We look at the third decimal, take its third digit, and change it.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, we keep moving down the diagonal of the spreadsheet, changing 1 digit from every single row.
So you are building a new number diagonally across the data set?
Right. And here's the paradox. That new number we just built, it cannot be anywhere on that original infinite list.
Wait, really?
Yeah. It can be the first number because we changed the first digit. It can't be the second number because we changed the second digit.
Oh, wow. So it differs from every single number on that supposedly complete infinite list by at least 1 digit.
Exactly. It used the rules of the spreadsheet to generate a number that breaks the spreadsheet.
That is wild. If I'm trying to picture this practically, is this like a highly complex computer game generating a piece of code, like a bug or a sentient character?
A sentient character is a great way to think about it.
Right, like something that the game's original programming can no longer define or control. It used the game's code to exist, but now it operates completely outside the game's boundaries.
Well, a sentient character escaping its programming implies an error or a glitch, right? Cantor's genius was showing us the exact opposite.
It's not a glitch.
No, this isn't a glitch in the code of the universe. Recursion, systems referencing themselves, looping back on themselves to create new, uncontainable outputs. That is a foundational property of all complex systems. In Cantor's math, this diagonal process acts as an invariant extractor. It creates a permanent doorway into a higher order structure. The system is inherently open-ended because its own internal logic forces it to generate something beyond itself.
So a system's ability to transcend itself is actually baked into the math.
Exactly.
But how do we get from a 19th century spreadsheet paradox to the 3690 sequence?
So the paper maps out this concept of self-reference using a very specific rotational lattice. It asks us to look at a grid repeating those 4 numbers.
Okay.
The visual model the paper uses is critical here. Imagine a matrix composed of horizontal rows. The first row is the sequence in order. 3, 6, 9, 0, 3, 6, 9.
Right, and that represents a continuous cycle.
Yeah. But the second row starts at a different phase. Instead of starting with 3, it shifts over and starts with 0. So it reads 0, 3, 6, 9, 0, 3, 6.
Okay, I'm visualizing this.
Then the third row shifts again, starting with 9. So it's progressing 9, 0, 3, 6, 9, 0, 3. And the fourth row starts with 6, going 6, 9, 0, 3, 6, 9, 0.
So every single row contains the exact same cyclical progression of numbers.
Yes. The core identity of the sequence is identical, but the orientation, the phase at which it begins, is constantly changing.
Which makes sense because we see this preservation of identity across shifting orientations everywhere in the physical world, right?
Oh, everywhere. Think about the mechanics of a clock. The hands sweep across the phase is constantly changing, but the underlying system of timekeeping remains completely coherent.
Orbital mechanics follow the same logic too.
Right.
A planet's orientation to its star transforms continuously along its elliptical path, but the system itself doesn't just fly apart.
Yep.
I am looking at this 3690 grid, though, and I have to be honest. It feels like a neat arithmetic trick. Because when you stack these offset rows on top of each other, because of the way the phases are staggered, a vertical or diagonal line suddenly emerges through the chaos of the shifting numbers.
Right.
If you trace down the columns or across the diagonal, you hit a solid line of threes. Just 3, 3, 3, 3, cutting right through the matrix. The paper calls this the invariant diagonal, or the seed line.
What's fascinating here is the dual behavior occurring simultaneously within the same space.
Oh, so.
Well, the horizontal rows represent recursive motion. They are the constant change, the shifting environment, the physical transformation. But cutting right through that flux, you have the diagonal, which represents invariant continuity.
Okay.
It is a conserved harmonic axis, a center of gravity that simply refuses to change.
Wait, so is this seed line basically the eye of a hurricane?
That's a really good analogy.
I mean, you're saying this mathematically explains physical phenomena, but how does a number grid actually map onto biological identity? We aren't made of numbers shifting in a matrix. We are flesh and blood.
We are flesh and blood that is entirely replaced over time, though.
Oh, true.
The mathematical concept of the invariant diagonal is the direct equivalent of biological homeostasis. Consider your own body. Over a span of several years, nearly every single atom you are made of is swapped out.
Right. Cells die, membranes degrade.
Exactly. Tissue regenerates. You are physically a completely different collection of matter today than you were a decade ago.
That's always so weird to think about.
It is. And that constant cellular turnover is the horizontal row in our grid, the shifting phases of 3, 6, 9, 0. Yet, your biological blueprint, your memories, your fundamental identity, it persists unbroken.
So the persistent identity of a person's personality is the diagonal line of threes cutting through the changing matter.
Yes, precisely.
A functional metaphor for this might be the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly.
Oh, I love that one.
When a caterpillar goes into a chrysalis, it doesn't just grow wings. It releases enzymes that dissolve nearly its entire body into a soup of raw biological material.
Just complete dissolution.
Right, the physical form, the orientation, it completely breaks down. But scattered inside that soup are highly organized clusters of cells called imaginal discs, and they hold the genetic blueprint for the butterfly.
Yes.
So the caterpillar dissolves, but the seed line, the invariant diagonal, survives the chaos to reorganize the soup into a new form.
The imaginal discs are the perfect biological manifestation of the invariant diagonal. They are the stable anchor that prevents the transformation from devolving into random noise.
Because without the seed line, the chrysalis just produces a puddle of dead cells.
Exactly. But there is a crucial mechanic in that biological process that we haven't touched on yet within the lattice. If the system is just shifting from 3 to 6 to 9 and then immediately back to 3, isn't that just a closed loop? Why doesn't the system just burn itself out like an engine running with no oil? Because it doesn't jump directly from 9 to 3. There is a phase transition in between them, the 0.
Right.
The paper refers to 0 as the return corridor. The authors assign very specific structural roles to these numbers. They posit that 3 represents emergence, the beginning of form.
Yes, the spark.
And 6 represents harmonic embodiment, the structure taking its shape. 9 is culmination, the absolute peak of the system cycle.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, linear arithmetic trains us to view numbers merely as quantities. But in topological recursion, 0 is not a quantity, it is an action.
An action.
Yes. Without 0, the sequence 369 is just mechanical repetition, an endless buildup. With 0, the system actually has the capacity to breathe.
Oh, wow.
It introduces silence, dissolution. It is the phase transition that allows the heavy culmination of 9 to dismantle itself, clearing the space so that a genuine reemergence at 3 can occur.
We so often think of 0 as just nothing. An empty bank account, an empty room, a void.
Right, a negative thing usually, yeah. I initially thought of it like an airlock on a spaceship, like a transition space you have to stand in before moving to the next environment.
It goes much deeper than a waiting room, though. The 0 phase is an active dismantling process. Returning to your chrysalis analogy, 0 is the digestive enzyme.
Oh, it's the soup.
Yes. It is the active destruction of the previous form, a space where the old structure is completely unmade. Without that period of dissolution, there are no raw materials available for the imaginal discs to build the butterfly.
So the destruction is necessary.
Absolutely. In a regenerative cycle, the dissolution phase is just as critical as the growth phase. 0 is the pause between the exhale and the inhale. Without it, the system hyperventilates and shatters. 0 ensures the cycle is forever becoming.
Is 0 actually the most active ingredient in this sequence because it's the only thing allowing the system to reset?
You could definitely argue that. It prevents the loop from becoming a static prison.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We have this breathing, rotating system anchored by a stable diagonal. But right now, we're picturing it as a flat grid of numbers on a piece of paper. What happens if we zoom out and take this recursive matrix and extend it infinitely in all directions?
The geometry bends. When you extend a continuous recursive lattice infinitely, the edges inevitably reconnect.
Right.
The flat grid transforms into 3D space.
Try to picture taking this flat piece of paper with our grid on it, giving it a half twist, and taping the ends together. It becomes a Mobius strip.
Exactly.
If you trace a line along a Mobius strip, you eventually cover both sides of the paper without ever crossing an edge. The orientation of your finger completely shifts from pointing up to pointing down, but the continuous field of the paper is never severed.
It's continuous.
Or the grid folds into a toroidal field, which is essentially a 3D wraparound donut shape. The energy flows up through the center hole, wraps around the outside, and pulls back up through the bottom, constantly turning inside out.
This is the moment the abstract mathematics map directly onto physical reality. These specific recurring organizational patterns, the continuous traversal of the Mobius strip and the regenerative loop of the toroid, they appear across vastly different domains.
Oh, yeah. There are the shapes of fluid vortices, like hurricanes and whirlpools.
And they map the exact flow of planetary electromagnetic fields. We see these same recursive, branching structures in the dendritic trees of our neural networks.
And in the underground mapping of fungal mycelium, right?
Exactly.
The paper even brings up the recursive organic geometries of crop circles, which honestly makes me deeply skeptical.
I know, it sounds a bit out there.
Yeah, but the paper specifically caveats that this rotational lattice doesn't prove supernatural certainty or external causation. It's not claiming to be magic.
Right.
So are we as human beings just deeply hardwired by our evolution to look for these rotational harmonics? Are we just finding faces in the clouds, seeing donuts and spirals everywhere because our brains like symmetry? Or are these shapes the literal structural blueprints of nature?
The tension between perception and reality is really the crux of the argument here. Human minds are inherently sensitive to mirrored symmetry, to rotational harmonics, and to central still points.
Okay.
We are aggressively tuned to recognize these phase-distributed nodal networks everywhere. But the reason we are tuned to recognize them is that we are physically constructed by them.
Oh, I see.
Our vascular systems, the electrical firing of our synapses, the geometric folding of our proteins, they all rely on these exact, regenerative, continuous geometries to function without breaking down. The pattern is recognizable in the external world because the pattern is the very mechanism of our internal biology.
So we are the system recognizing the system.
Yes.
Which brings Cantor's 19th century paradox full circle.
Yeah.
His legacy wasn't just establishing that infinities come in different sizes. It was proving that complex systems contain recursive mirrors of themselves. And through that self-reference, they generate the capacity for transcendence. They build things outside their own original boundaries.
And that leads directly into the psychological application of this math. This raises an important question regarding how we process information overload.
Right. How do we handle it?
Well, the paper posits that human consciousness itself functions recursively. We observe the patterns of reality, but we simultaneously participate within them. We are both the shifting rows and the observer of the rows.
That makes sense.
The paper calls the mastery of this duality cultivating the diagonal mind.
I'm glad it specifies what the diagonal mind is, because it sounds like a state of mystical omniscience, which frankly sounds exhausting to maintain.
Oh, it is not omniscience. It is a highly practical cognitive capacity. The diagonal mind is the ability to perceive continuity through transformation.
Okay.
It is the mental endurance to see coherence across massive phase shifts and to consciously identify the invariance within recursion. To put it simply, it is the capacity to exist deep within the chaotic matrix of your daily life while simultaneously remaining anchored beyond it.
So when you are feeling overwhelmed by a chaotic week, or navigating a massive life change, a new career, moving to a new city, or experiencing a deep personal loss,
Right.
everything around you feels like those shifting rows of numbers. Pure rotational flux. Your orientation in the world is completely dissolving.
It's terrifying.
Leaning into your diagonal mind means actively hunting for your own invariant diagonal.
Yeah.
It means identifying your absolute core values, your personal seed line, to help you navigate those phase shifts. Your environment is transforming, your social orientation is changing, but your core identity persists unharmed.
Exactly. You locate the imaginal disks within your own psychological chrysalis. You recognize that you are the system transforming continuously without losing coherence. Stability and change are not opposing forces.
No.
In any regenerative system, they are partners.
We've covered an immense amount of ground today. We started with Georg Cantor, a mathematician who stared into infinity and discovered a structured lattice instead of a void. We explored the mechanics of a breathing biological sequence, the 3-6-9-0 cycle, where identity is preserved even as orientation endlessly spins. And we mapped how abstract mathematical topology applies directly to viewing our own lives through the diagonal mind. Finding the spine of who we are while the world rotates around us, we are, as the paper beautifully puts it, forever becoming.
A becoming that requires every part of the cycle to function, including the dissolution.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over on your own today.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time analyzing the mechanics of the zero corridor, that vital, destructive phase of silence, dismantling, and reset. We established that biological life and natural systems mathematically require that zero state to breathe to ensure the loop doesn't grind down into a static prison. But look closely at the modern world we've built. Examine our digital systems, the endless training algorithms of artificial intelligence, and our 24/7 hyper-connected work cultures.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they are almost entirely engineered for endless, unbroken culmination. A perpetual state of 9. Always producing, always expanding, never resting. If the mathematics of reality mandate a phase transition to survive, what happens to a system that categorically refuses to dissolve? Are we building systems that have forgotten how to breathe?
A system that lacks a zero phase merely repeats until it exhausts its resources. It cannot regenerate.
Keep that in mind the next time you feel guilty for resting, or for letting a project temporarily fall apart so it can be rebuilt better. The dissolution is part of the blueprint. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. As always, you are the crucial third perspective in this conversation. As you step back out into the noise of your day, look closely at the swirling matrix around you, and take a moment to find your own invariant diagonal. We'll catch you next time.